They said I could come home, but only if I left him behind. I smiled, carrying a truth they weren't ready for. The gates of the Carter mansion opened as if summoned by memory not welcome. The Thanksgiving wreath on the door was too perfect, like everything Judith Carter touched, immaculate, expensive, and devoid of warmth. I stepped inside the soles of my boots, brushing against marble so polished it mirrored the ceiling. My reflection looked older but not worn, just sharpened. 1 year ago, I stood on this same floor, voice raw, defending Micah as they hurled words at him like stones. Parasite, con artist, you're throwing your life away. Then the door had slammed, and so had a part of my past. Now it creaked open again, not for me, but for the version of me they thought I might have become: broken, regretful, malleable. The dining room hadn't changed. Mahogany table, 12 high-backed chairs, floral centerpiece as tall as my dignity. Judith was already there, arranging utensils with surgical precision. "You're early," she said without looking up. "I remembered the schedule never changes," I replied, setting my bag down, careful, but not hesitant. She finally glanced up. Her eyes swept over my clothes, pausing at the faded blue sweater. Her lips twitched. "That old thing? You knitted it?" I said softly. "I thought it might make you nostalgic." Her expression froze for half a second before she moved on to slicing into a pear tart like it had personally offended her. Raymond entered next, phone to his ear, grumbling about bond yields and those goddamn auditors. He noticed me and gave a curt nod. "Didn't think you'd really come." "You invited me?" I said. "Judith invited you," he corrected. "You know how she is, traditions." Ethan breezed in, wearing a salmon-colored sweater and loafers, carrying a tumbler of something that wasn't apple cider. "Hey, look who crawled back from love rehab." He dropped into a chair, grinning at me. "How's the homeless husband, still playing philosopher under the overpass?" Judith let out a breath like she was trying to suppress a laugh. "Ethan." "What?" I'm just glad she finally saw reason. I didn't flinch. I let the silence sit, then sipped from my water glass and said, "Still the best-dressed man in Houston, last I checked, though your jacket is trying very hard to compete." Vera arrived quietly, her eyes flickering from me to Judith. She said nothing but sat next to Ethan like a shadow. She didn't look well. Her lipstick was faint hair pulled too tight. Judith poured her wine without being asked. The food came out in waves, just like always: creamed spinach, herb-roasted turkey, Judith's infamous no-butter mashed potatoes, because cholesterol is generational. But the seat they offered me was near the end of the table, away from the family nucleus, a reminder. "You're here, but you're not one of us." I smiled anyway. They passed platters, avoided eye contact, except Ethan, always too comfortable. "So, Micah, what's he doing these days? Still collecting coffee cups and street philosophies?" "I believe he's preparing to walk into a storm," I said. "He thrives in the eye of it." That shut Ethan up for about 7 seconds. Raymond lifted his glass, bourbon, not wine. "To family. Even when we lose our way, we eventually come home." I raised mine too. "Yes, some of us never really leave." He chuckled like I'd confirmed his point. "I just hope this time you remember who built all this. What we protected you from." My grip tightened slightly on the glass. "You're right. I remember everything." A vibration buzzed in my coat pocket. I excused myself and stepped onto the patio. The sun was slanting across the tiled floor, and the wind had the kind of chill that made you feel newly alive. I pulled out my phone. The text was short. "Everything's in motion." I dialed the number I'd memorized on the night they cursed us both, the number I'd never used until now. It rang once, then silence. "Tomorrow. 6:30 p.m., I said. "Walk through the front door. No mercy. This room still smells like my childhood, lavender and loneliness, but today it holds something more: evidence." The door creaked as I pushed it open, revealing the room they used to call mine. Dust hung in the air like a forgotten sigh. The lace curtains Judith insisted on for femininity had yellowed around the edges, and the quilted bedspread remained stiff from starch, as though no one had ever actually slept in it. The room hadn't changed, but it no longer recognized me. I closed the door softly and leaned against it for a second. The silence here wasn't comforting. It was the kind that hums just above your bones like a memory refusing to die. 1 year ago on this same day, I had stood in the hallway with my hands trembling. Judith had burned the letters Micah wrote me in the fireplace like it was a sacrifice. Raymond had torn my resume in half when I said I wanted to work in public education. "You're throwing away your pedigree," he barked as if dreams should be collateral for legacy. I hadn't cried. Not then. Just like now. I turned toward the vanity still perfectly staged with perfume bottles I hadn't touched in a decade. The drawer beneath creaked open with a reluctant groan. Inside were notebooks, old earrings, and tucked in the back a thin envelope with my name in Raymond's angular handwriting. My pulse quickened. I pulled it out. Inside a draft contract, a loan agreement dated 13 months ago. A massive 7-figure line of credit and a space for 2 signatures. One was Raymond's. The other line was blank. I remembered the day he handed it to me, smiling like he was offering me a seat at the table. "You'll be a Carter in full, not just in name," he said. I'd refused. Said I needed to read it. Within a week, the door was slammed. The locks changed. Judith said I'd betrayed the family. I took a photo of the contract with my phone, then tapped out a call. "Sophia," I whispered as soon as the line picked up. "I found it." Drafted, but unsigned. Her voice was crisp, always 10 steps ahead. "Good. That confirms the original. We compared signatures on the recorded version. Yours was forged." A knot of fury coiled in my stomach. "They're using it to move money under my name." "They already have," she said. 3 transfers in the past 5 months. One to a shell account linked to Ethan, another to a consultancy with no employees. We're tracking the third. I sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress was stiff foreign now. That explains why they wanted me back. Not to reconcile, but to make sure I wouldn't ruin it. Sophia paused. Or notice. There was a soft knock at the door. I ended the call and slid the document back into the drawer. Vera stepped in her hands, wringing the edge of her cardigan. "I shouldn't be in here," she said quickly, eyes darting behind her. "It's fine," I said, offering her a seat. She didn't take it. "They're lying to you," she whispered, almost choking on the words. "I don't know everything, but I've kept things. Emails, notes. Ethan never deletes anything." My breath caught. "What are you saying? I'll send them tonight." "Just..." She glanced at the door. "Be careful, Lena. They don't lose gently." She left before I could respond. The door closed behind her with a finality that didn't feel like fear. It felt like choosing a side. I walked to the bookshelf Judith had left untouched. Mostly for display, Austin Steinbeck, a pristine Bible. I found it, the spine still frayed from the day she threw it at me. Pride and Prejudice. The irony made me smile. I slipped a printed copy of the draft contract into it, aligning it with page 314. There was a gentle knock. Then Judith's voice. "May I?" I sat back down. "Of course." She entered with a porcelain teacup. Earl Grey, no sugar, my old favorite before I knew preferences could be used as weapons. She placed it in my hands like a peace offering sculpted from poison. "You look calmer," she said, settling into the chair across from me. "I hope that means you're finally ready to be part of this family again." I looked at her, over the rim of the cup, steam brushing my face. "That depends," I said softly. "Are you ready to be honest?" Judith blinked. The moment stretched like a held breath, but she smiled tight and empty, then rose without a word. After she left, my phone buzzed. "Vera sending files now. Tell Micah he was right about everything. You married a nobody," they said. And then the doors opened, and that nobody made the room go silent. The dining room was candlelit to the edge of theatrics. Every silver fork and china plate reflected back curated perfection. Judith sat at the head, her posture regal, her expression sculpted from frost. She wore pearls that had belonged to her mother, the kind of heirloom meant to remind others of legacy. Raymond beside her checked his phone between bites of dry turkey. Ethan told another story about golfing with someone important. But no one was really listening, especially not me. I watched the flicker of wax on crystal glasses, the careful arrangement of name cards, and how mine had been placed precisely next to no one. I'd said little all evening, just smiled, nodded, watched. Then at exactly 6:30 the front doors creaked open. The sound pierced the air, casual yet undeniable, like thunder wrapped in velvet. Conversations died mid-word. Forks hovered mid-air. The only movement came from the slow, even footfalls approaching the room. Micah stepped into the candlelight-tailored charcoal suit white shirt, open at the collar, not a tie in sight. No one breathed. His hair was neatly swept back and his expression unreadable. Calm, controlled, deadly. The kind of calm that isn't peace, it's precision. He looked at no one at first, then one nod. To me. Judith was the first to speak, though it wasn't speech, more a strangled inhale. Ethan tried to laugh loud and brittle. "You're not invited." Micah turned toward him slowly. Didn't realize thieves needed formal invitations. Ethan blinked. "Excuse me?" Raymond stood. "This is a private dinner." Micah's voice was silk. "I'm not here to eat." He stepped forward, each movement deliberate. "I'm here for what's mine and what you tried to steal." Judith's wineglass quivered in her hand. "Lena," Micah said without looking at me. "Do you mind?" I shook my head once. He continued. "Let's talk about Ironvale Capital. You know them, the firm negotiating to buy Carter Holdings' debt. The one Raymond tried to bluff his way out of last quarter." Raymond's color drained. "I'm their newest equity partner," Micah said. "I didn't want to get involved. But you involved me when you forged Lena's signature on a fraudulent loan. When you leaked private letters to get me blacklisted. When you sabotaged 3 job offers she never even got to hear about." Judith let out a broken laugh. "We did no such." "Do you really want to test that in front of your entire extended family?" he asked. A long pause. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a folded paper. Placed it on the table. "Here's your contract," he said. "The one you claimed Lena signed. Notice anything odd about the handwriting? Raymond didn't touch it." Ethan stared at it like it might catch fire. "You don't get to break a man and profit off it," Micah said, voice low. "You don't get to destroy her name and smile about it over turkey." Judith's hand slipped. Her wine glass crashed against the floor, shattering scarlet into the rug. No one moved to clean it. Across the table, Franklin, my uncle on my father's side, a man of few words and fewer allegiances, leaned back in his chair and watched Micah with something unfamiliar respect. Vera, silent in the corner, raised her phone slightly. Just enough to suggest it had been recording all along. Ethan stood abruptly. "This is insane!" "Sit down." Raymond snapped, voice cracking, and then Micah turned to me. "Only me. Do you want them on their knees or just out of your life?" They wanted me to sign my name. Instead, I handed them the proof of their betrayal. The air in Raymond's study felt like molasses, thick, still, and suffocating. The heavy curtains blocked out the morning sun, casting a courtroom pallor over everything. Mahogany shelves groaned with unread law books. A decanter of untouched scotch glinted on the sideboard. The room was built for intimidation, but today, intimidation had changed hands. I took the seat closest to the fireplace. Micah stood behind me, his hands folded, silent and watchful. Judith arrived next, her heels slicing into the rug like they had something to prove. Ethan trailed behind, her jaw tight, twitching with rehearsed outrage. Raymond, as always, was last commanding entrance like a judge about to deliver a sentence. He cleared his throat and gestured to the thick folder on the table. This is a proposal, a restructuring of family assets, to safeguard our holdings in light of recent volatility. He didn't look at me directly, just slid the folder toward my side of the table. You'll notice, he continued, we've positioned your shares under a protected trust. All we need is your signature. I didn't open the folder. I already signed something I said voice even. Remember last year. Or so the bank claims. Raymond blinked. We've moved past that. No, I interrupted. You hoped I had. I opened my bag and removed a smaller folder, placed it precisely where his had sat. Micah stepped to the side, his presence widening the silence like a curtain drawn open. I unfolded the pages one by one, a scanned copy of the forged signature timestamps from the bank's access logs, email correspondence between Ethan and a certain GD at Goldcrest Financial, all laid out like surgical instruments. Vera shifted in her seat, then reached into her coat and pulled out a sleek USB. She placed it gently on the table, her hand steady. There are voice memos on this, she said. Ethan recorded them by accident. Or maybe he just thought no one would ever hear them. Judith's voice snapped. This is absurd. You're going to let her and that man poison this family with accusations and cheap parlor tricks. Franklin, silent until now, cleared his throat. I've heard the recordings. Everyone turned. Franklin, whose loyalty had always leaned toward keeping peace, now looked like he'd stepped into the role of arbitrator. I've also consulted an outside attorney, he said, pulling out his own notes. This constitutes felony fraud, especially if funds were knowingly funneled using a falsified legal document. Ethan shifted violently in his chair. You're siding with her now. No, Franklin replied calmly. I'm siding with the law. Raymond's hands were no longer still. One trembled at the edge of the folder as though willing it to disappear. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, I said. You used me. You forged my name. And when that wasn't enough, you tried to dress it up as family duty. Judith's eyes flashed. We were protecting you. Your silence was agreement. No, I said, standing now. My silence was grief. But that's over. Her voice turned cold. You're manipulating this, turning your siblings against us. I looked her in the eye. You taught me well. The words hung there, reverberating louder than a scream. Ethan shot to his feet, knocking over a chair. This is garbage, this whole setup. He looked around wildly. You think this will stand? You think a judge is going to care about family drama? You'd be surprised what the IRS cares about, Micah said quietly. Ethan stormed out, slamming the study door so hard a book fell from the shelf. Judith stared at the folder on the table, lips parted, but no words formed. Raymond looked older now, not in years, but in erosion. Micah stepped forward, placed another folder, black, sleek, no label, in front of Raymond. These are Iron Vale's buyout terms, he said, voice low. You're going to want to read them. They used to talk over me. Now they sit down silent and waiting for my terms. The conference room on the 32nd floor of Sophia's downtown law office was the opposite of the Carter mansion, not a single detail wasted on pretense. White walls, steel chairs, glass windows framing a Houston skyline that didn't care who you were or how much you lost. It smelled like ink and finality. I sat at the head of the table, Micah on my left, Sophia on my right. Her presence radiated calm precision. 2 folders lay closed in front of her, one maroon, one blue, and both would burn if anyone here so much as blinked wrong. Raymond entered first, followed by Judith, their faces carved from stone. Behind them, the family attorney, a gray-haired man with an anxious tie, clutched a briefcase like it might protect him from what was about to unfold. Franklin entered next, offering no pleasantries. Vera trailed behind quiet but alert phone tucked into her blazer. No one asked for water. Sophia began. This is a binding negotiation. All parties understand the legal implications. The family attorney nodded. Yes, I didn't waste time. These are my terms, I said, sliding the maroon folder across the table. They are not open for debate. Judith scoffed, arms crossed. You think you can dictate the future of this family? I'm not dictating, I said. I'm finalizing. She glanced down at the list. Her eyes narrowed. Full asset reversion, she read. All properties, stocks, and liquid assets returned to your legal control? I nodded. Everything transferred in my name without my consent reverts. With interest. She looked up, her mouth forming the beginning of a protest. I spoke over it. Second, a public apology. On record. One each from both of you to me and to Micah. By name. Admitting what you did and why it was wrong. Judith slammed her hand on the table. You want to humiliate us? Micah finally leaned forward, voice calm. You humiliated yourselves. This is the receipt. Sophia added, third term, complete severance of legal and financial ties. Effective immediately. No more shared accounts, trust disputes, cosigns, or inheritance loopholes. The Carters and Lena Sanders become two distinct legal entities. Raymond's hand gripped the table. Judith was shaking her head. Absolutely not. I won't be branded a liar. You are a liar, I said evenly, and a thief. But this isn't about names anymore. It's about lines. I'm drawing them. Raymond shifted, reaching into his jacket. He pulled out a document of his own, thin, desperate. We can amend the trust. Clean slate. Keep this internal. Micah laughed, quiet, surgical. You might want to read the blue folder. Sophia opened it, sliding the papers forward. As of this morning, Ironvale has assumed full control of the mortgage and liens on the Carter estate via structured acquisition. That includes the main house, the beach property, and your downtown condo. Raymond paled. If Lena chooses, Sophia continued, we can initiate foreclosure proceedings by Monday. But we're offering you this room instead. Judith stood her chair, screeching behind her. This is blackmail. Franklin finally spoke. No, this is grace. He turned to them, eyes harder than I'd ever seen. Do you want your friends reading about felony forgery in the Sunday paper? Or do you want to disappear quietly with your jewelry and what little pride you have left? Judith sat down slowly. No one spoke for a long minute. Micah reached over and gently placed a pen between them. Raymond didn't move. But Judith picked it up. Her hand trembled as she signed the apology letter. 1 page, 3 sentences. Each word cutting her deeper than any court could. Raymond signed next. His eyes never left mine. Hatred, yes, but fear, too. A man watching the end of a dynasty crumble at the hands of the daughter he underestimated. I looked at them both. This isn't revenge, I said. This is correction. Sophia stamped the final page. The sound echoed like a gavel. Effective immediately, she said. You are no longer legal family. I stood, smoothed my blouse. And emotional, I met Judith's eyes one last time. That ended a long time ago. I didn't need them on their knees. But they were. And not for me, for what they lost. The sun was bleeding gold across the Carter estate, washing its manicured hedges and marble columns in a color too warm for the people who lived inside. Movers in gray uniforms moved like ghosts, quietly ferrying out boxes, unscrewing curtain rods, lifting the past without ceremony. I stood on the front steps, a single suitcase by my side. Micah was beside me, his fingers interlaced with mine. He hadn't said much, he didn't need to. Some victories are silent. Judith hovered just beyond the doorway, the heirloom ring glinting in her palm like a last-ditch prayer. She stepped forward, face brittle behind its mask of grace. Your grandmother wore this every Sunday, she said, holding it out. She would have wanted you to. I stopped her with a look. She would have wanted dignity. You lost that. I didn't take the ring. I didn't take anything. Raymond leaned against the doorframe, not quite broken, but badly cracked. His eyes weren't pleading, not the way hers were, but there was a quiet void in them, like someone staring into the bottom of a bank account that used to define his worth. "Where will you go?" he asked. Micah answered for me. "Somewhere that doesn't worship bloodlines." The silence after that was the most honest moment we'd ever shared. Franklin appeared in the hallway, gave me a single nod, firm, final. Behind him, Vera stood near the stairwell, unreadable. As I passed, she stepped forward and slipped her hand into mine. No words, just warmth. And then she let go. We walked down the steps slowly. The crunch of gravel underfoot was louder than any of their goodbyes. Halfway to the car, a sound cracked through the air behind us, a choked sob. I turned. Ethan was on his knees in the foyer, shoulders shaking. His palms pressed to the cold tiles like he could anchor himself. "Don't leave me alone with them," he gasped. For a second, something old in me stirred. The sister. The girl who once stayed quiet so Ethan wouldn't take the blame. The one who let herself be the scapegoat to keep the peace. But she was gone now. I didn't speak. I just walked. The gates groaned open as we approached. The car was waiting, engine humming softly like a whisper of departure. At the edge of the driveway, I paused, reached into my bag, pulled out the faded sweater, pale green, fraying at the sleeves, the one Judith had knit when I was 17. Her apology for missing a recital, her bribe for silence. I walked to the mailbox, draped it across the top, let the wind catch its edges. A relic returned, a chain broken, and then I left. The house that once silenced her voice now echoed with the weight of its own guilt. What began as exile ended with reckoning, not through vengeance, but through truth, armed with precision. Justice, long delayed, arrived not in thunder, but in silence, too loud to ignore. When injustice is met with unwavering courage, the final verdict can echo through a lifetime. If this story moved you, share and comment your thoughts below. Type 1 if you've ever felt the sting of betrayal and the power of rising back.